All right, welcome to the Service Show, Virginia Business and Politics. Oh, tonight's going to be an interesting episode. It's going to be a very interesting episode. So, each brother chef. I'm Seko Varner. That's my good friend Con.
What's Seko on the
Conrad Chesviner. And tonight we're going to go, I guess we're going to leave the Hampton Roads area and go through the beautiful state of Virginia. So, who do we have on the show tonight, brother?
Well, thank you as always, Mr. Seko. And as we know, the show focuses on good business and politics in the state of Virginia. We prefer good talks on policy, stuff that helps the community. And we highlight how policy is over party. Well, tonight we are going to take that literally. Our guest is a Virginian since 2004. She is a Morgan State graduate. She also has a master's and has used it to become a teacher. She also has been an assistant principal. She's Princess Blanding, and Princess is running to be Virginia's governor in 2021, but on the banner of the Liberation Party. We're going to get into the Liberation Party. We're going to get into the depths of your run, but first, how are you and how's your week been?
I'm pushing along. I'm well, thank you. And my week has been very productive. A very productive week. As there's, I have a full-time job as an educator, and I also am again running for governor. So yeah, it's been a good week. Every day that I'm, here and able to keep pushing forward, it's a great week. It's a great day.
How's the life of an educator?
It's difficult. I'm gonna be honest with you. As an educator, over 13 years, and now dealing with such a drastic change, in the world of COVID, it's different. Not just because I am sitting at home teaching, but because I'm seeing my baby struggle even more. And I'm seeing students who were struggling pre-COVID. We're losing way too many. And so again, it keeps my wheels turning as to, what do we need to do differently, to ensure that we're not allowing our students to get pushed even further behind, and just being really, really, innovative and thinking outside of the box so that we can ensure that, our students still get those main core components that they need to demonstrate understanding and be able to move forward with their education post the pandemic.
Beautiful. I also am a teacher, and so I'm also in my little home studio teaching, 4 classes, and it's really disparaging because some of our students really needed the structure of coming off that bus, going into a environment where it was a little more strict. It was stricter than home, and they couldn't get away with stuff that they could get away with in the home environment. And they were asked to do things and be responsible in a way that they weren't asked in their home environment. So it's really disappointing to see so many of our students that are not doing well. But we're here to talk about you, so let's talk about you.
Hello, Virginians. My name is Princess Blanding, and today I am grateful to announce my candidacy for Governor of Virginia as the nominee of the newly formed Liberation Party. Since the murder of my brother, Marcus David Peters, I stood alongside community members and fellow organizers as we fought tirelessly together for changes that will put community care and safety first for all Virginians. Our time is now to create a future in which all Virginians see their values reflected in their leaders. From our cherished rural communities such as my hometown and Middle Peninsula, along with Danville and Buckingham County, to our growing urban centers, from Hampton Roads to Nova to Richmond, we seek a future in which we dismantle the two-party system that continues to block needed progressive changes. As governor, I will trust the science and use sound moral judgment as we transform the Commonwealth into a common good state that prioritizes clean energy, provides comprehensive health care for all, is economically thriving, ensures that Black lives matter, is gender inclusive, and guaranteed housing security for all Virginians. We will provide our youth with the safe, state-of-the-art schools they deserve. We will staff all schools with professionally paid teachers. Virginia, together, we will address our broken criminal injustice system and the racial inequalities that ensure liberty and justice for some, but not all. I look forward to working alongside you as we move towards a party that elevates the voices, priorities, and needs of the people. Virginia, we are stronger together. And with your support, we will reshape and build a diverse, inclusive, liberated Virginia for all. I invite you to join our campaign by visiting us at princessblandon.com to learn more, donate, contact me, or sign up to volunteer. Liberation for all is a human right, not a privilege. I look forward to our partnership.
It looks like we have a fan. Jerry Staples looks like he's a fan. He's like Terry McPipelines or Princess Blanding. Easy choice. So he has some fans in the house today. Great video. So before we get into some of the other things that we really want to talk about, you said that we need to dismantle the two-party system.
Absolutely.
I gotta ask about that. Gotta ask.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. And so, yeah, for myself, I know this summer was like the last straw for me. And I worked alongside legislators here in Virginia, such as, Senator Jennifer McCullen, such as Senator Heshmi, Senator Jeremy McPike, Delegate Jeff Bourne. And, although I think they are great people, they made their allegiance to the party and not to the people, and that is not okay. And what we see too often is that, not just here in Virginia, but people across the country, that we're put in a situation where we have to choose between the lesser of two evils. And I'm referring to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, when neither of the parties are truly putting the needs, concerns, and priorities of the people first. And so, again, we believe that you can't simply just whine and cry and complain about a problem. You have to get to the point where you are willing to step out of your comfort zone and be a part of the solution to ensure the future that we all deserve. We believe that liberation is a human right. It is absolutely not a privilege, based on any factors. And so, again, being a part of the solution, one of the mediums or means of being a part of the solution is to rise up a strong independent party. And I remember over the summer, I was saying that a lot, and probably even more so before I really truly anticipated on doing it. But I just knew that the two-party system was broken and that it was continuously failing Virginians across the Commonwealth. And here we are now. There's no turning back at this point. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party both should be concerned.
Well, I want to touch on your part of Virginia itself. You just touched on the entirety of the Commonwealth. And as you just touched on in the video, you're from Middle Peninsula, and you also have a rural working class background. So could you give us a good rundown of your favorite parts of your area of Virginia and any great businesses and attractions?
Sure. So I'm from New York, upstate New York originally, but again, I've been here in Virginia since 2004. So this is my home, and I live in the Middle Peninsula. It was culture shock for me. Let me first start off by saying, coming from the city, living now in a very rural area, but I love it. I love it. I have my ducks. I'm a real country girl now, and I love just the simplicity of life out here. I love walking outside and smelling the fresh air. I love being able to garden. I love being able to go. One of my favorite areas is the volunteer fire department thrift stores. Those are my favorite locations because I love to thrift shop. And just around here, everybody, you get to know everybody, and you get to build relationships, with your community members. And, Yeah, that's around here as far as attractions are concerned, probably about 5 miles or so away from me is Bethpage Campground, which is in Urbana. In that area, at least once a year, it brings in a large crowd of people for the Oyster Festival, and so that's kind of like the big hooray out my way. But again, I live out here in the rural area, and it took a while for me to adjust being a city girl, but I love it. I feel really, really fortunate to, have the space where I'm able to do things such as composting, and using that compost to, grow food, for myself and for my family. And so, yeah, that's what it's like out here for me. I tell people I see more deer than people oftentimes.
Do I have this right? Did you also do piano?
Yes. I don't play that much anymore. I don't think I have that much time. But when I was a little girl back up in New York, about 7 years old, one of my older sisters was playing the piano. And I was like, I want to learn how to play. So since about 7, my mother started me on private piano lessons until I went off to Morgan State University. So yeah, that's something I was able to pass down, at least to my oldest daughter. My other two children kind of fiddle around here and there.
And do I also have it right that you have been involved in community issues even before the past several years?
I have. So, mostly, I'm going to kind of go back some. I remember as a young girl, probably a young teenager, sitting on my porch, back home and, always mentoring to the young people, just trying well, let me say younger than me, right? I think people always told me I was an old soul trapped in a young body, but always just trying to mentor to, some of the younger ones, and get them and try to keep them on the right track. And, after I became an educator in Essex, let me go back. After I became a school administrator, so it was probably about my 7th year in education, I had started a program called STOMP, Students Thriving Through Mentorship Opportunities, through students striving through opportunities, mentorship, and perseverance. And, we had teachers volunteer to help students to be able to access things that they wouldn't normally be able to do, and opportunities such as I was able to take them to the museums in DC. We did some volunteer work, such as at the dog shelter and cleaning up, in the community. So that was something that meant a lot to me because I noticed that there weren't any positive activities for our students to do after school, and the idle mind, can get in a lot of trouble. So it was something positive for students to do, and the quantity of students started to grow really, really nicely. And then we had a overturn in upper administration. I can no longer do that. And then after Marcus was unjustly murdered, it just continued to bump up, to me, taking a strong stance, for mental health, racial justice, and criminal justice.
Okay. So tell us more about Marcus David Peters and how this brings us to you running for governor.
Sure. So I'm one of 12 on one side, and Marcus, I believe, was the third youngest. And as I said earlier, I was an assistant principal at Essex High School, and we one of our teachers, for whatever reasons, had to leave kind of shortly after the start of the year, and we were in desperate need of a science teacher, which any educator knows that teachers aren't always easy to find, but especially our science teachers, right? Like our SPED teachers. And so I knew Marcus had a background in biology, and we needed a biology teacher. And so I, kind of remember calling him saying, hey, Poppy, we need somebody. Is this something you're interested in? And, he took it on in October. So he didn't have that pre-service time, complete novice at teaching, but he jumped in and quickly, hit the road running and gravitated towards our students. And, on May 14th, 2018, after he taught a full day, Marcus went towards his home. He went home in Henrico, met his girlfriend, and he had a brief conversation. He was supposed to come quickly, make a run to the Jefferson Hotel where he worked a second job as security, as unfortunately too many teachers have to do. And he promised to quickly get back and take her to VCU to return textbooks, and he never returned back. And what we saw was that Marcus started to display a lot of atypical behaviors that caused him to first flagged, at least to us, initially was by him hitting some vehicles, and we saw some video footage, of him derobing at the Jefferson Hotel, which quickly evolved to him having an encounter with a police officer, and Marcus stepping out of his car completely undressed, completely unarmed, as evident by him being undressed, running towards the highway. And we can hear an officer saying that this individual is mentally stable as we speak. However, the officer escalated the situation by, engaging with Marcus, instead of just waiting a moment or more, for either the officer who was on the other side of the highway to come, or the large quantity of officers that quickly showed up on the scene. And he, after identifying Marcus was mentally unstable, he approached him with a gun and a taser, and expected for him, someone that's not in your right state of mind, to follow verbal commands. That's not too smart, right? So again, it resulted in Marcus being tased with one electrode penetrate in his body. So if you're a science teacher, you know that you need both of them to create a closed circuit. So therefore it was ineffective. And then the officer discharged his service weapon, shooting Marcus 3 times. And the Commonwealth attorney deemed it was a justifiable homicide, as my family and I were told throughout the entire process to trust the system. And the system deemed it a justifiable homicide. However, Governor Northam just signed off on the Marcus alert bill. We have a lot of broken pieces here.
Who was
So again, that's kind of the backstory of Marcus.
Who deemed it justifiable,
Sure.
and what are we doing about them now?
Right. So it was the first Commonwealth attorney was Michael Heron, and he deemed my brother's murder a justifiable homicide. During the Richmond uprising this summer, one of our demands of the Richmond community was to reopen Marcus's case to give him a second chance at justice. And Colette McKeechin, the current Commonwealth attorney, both of them Black, also deemed it a justifiable homicide as well. And so, what we, to answer your question, so what are we doing now? As far as Marcus, as far as, just looking at, mental health, looking at housing disparities, looking at racial, criminal injustices, in totality, environmental justices, what we do know is that our fight can't be exclusively in the streets. That there comes a point where our fight has to expand from the streets to the seats of these key positions in order to get what we the people deserve. And so we will get justice for Marcus David Peters. There's no doubt in my mind, but we can't bring Marcus back. And that's something that I understand, that we understand. But what we have every ability to do is to ensure that a person having a mental health crisis never has a death sentence. It's kind of like saying a person who's a diabetic, whose kidneys are now failing and they're dependent on dialysis, because that organ failed, we're going to demonize you and we're going to kill you. We don't do that with any other major organ in the body except for the brain. We've got a lot of issues that we need to address. And so, twice it was deemed a justifiable homicide, but it's not over. Again, we have to move it from the streets to the seats of these key positions. And that includes supporting others who are running for Commonwealth attorney, per se, that will truly put the people over profit and politics in the establishment.
I was just about to ask, isn't Mark running for something right now?
Which Mark?
Herring.
Attorney General. He's running again. Against Jay Jones from Norfolk.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Delegate Jay Jones.
Yep.
Salute to Andrea Dixon, who says that this is why Black faces in high places is meaningless if you're going to keep the status quo.
And what I say to that is, and I've said it many times, and, not here to say what people want to hear, but what needs to be heard. And I thank you, Ms. Dixon, because sometimes, we get excited about a Black face, or a face that, that we can identify with getting into some of these key positions. But we have to look at what they're about. What is it that you're actually going to do? Because too many of us allow ourselves to become a Black pawn, is what I call them. You get in these key positions, but you again become a pawn of the establishment, although you know better, and a lot of times it's pushed because of people's own personal interests, their own personal political interests. And again, it goes back to, and I know it sounds like a broken record, but we need fearless leaders who are going to put people over politics and profit, because again, many of them may go in it with the right intentions, but they're not held accountable, to the people who put them in those key positions.
Now, you just mentioned that we got to stop from fighting in the streets to going up and fighting for the seats. But before you went for that, you did begin with a grassroots effort. In fact, it was barely a week or two after that shooting that you were creating justice and reformation. Could you break down your process with that, what you sought to do? Did you have demands? And could you actually meet with representatives in Richmond and state government?
The streets into the seats, right? So I'm not saying we stop it. We just can't let it be exclusively in the streets, right? And so, after Marcus was murdered, I remember seeing, for one, I remember the call. And I remember going to the hospital, and quickly, I remember it, and it was like there was no time to grieve, because I quickly remember seeing Marcus's undressed body being flaunted all over the media. With a narrative of crazy black men. And I knew that was not who Marcus David Peters was. Marcus David Peters was a goofball. Marcus David Peters was a black man who graduated top of his class in this very rural area where black people are the minority, especially our young black people in our schools, that he was a class speaker for his high school graduation, that he was a young man who went on to VCU to earn his bachelor's degree in biology with minors in chemistry, psychology, and was fluent in Spanish, as that was one of his minors as well. That Marcus David Peters had no criminal history. And guess what? Even if he did have one, he was still a human. Okay. And so to watch him, to watch the media, because the media has a big role, in narratives. So to watch the city in the media try to make Marcus take the worst moment of his life and cause that to define him and to wipe up all of the good that he has done and who he was, I refuse to allow that to happen. So there was no time to even mourn. It's kind of like, I was in fight or flight mode, and it was like, I contacted the media and I said, I need to tell who Marcus David Peters was. And that's where it started. And I'm very thankful that, within, I want to say about a week, I was contacted by, I believe it was Phil Willako with the Virginia Defenders for Freedom, Justice, and Equality. And he's like family to me now. And, he connected me with amazing people. I remember going to Second Baptist Church with Reverend Harris, James Harris, and my uncle and I walked into a room of several people, diverse people, and they just knew that even though they didn't know Marcus David Peters directly, they knew that his murder was unjust, and they knew that we could not sit on our hands and sit silently, and so I'm a strong believer that your silence is violence, and that's across the board, from A to Z. And so that's where it began, for me. Is there was no time to mourn. It was time to jump into action, and say, well, you know what, if this could happen to Marcus, it can happen to one of my 3 daughters. Okay, it can happen to one of my students. As an educator, I have students with disabilities such as autism. And I know how just lights, or sounds can cause them to start moving and welling. And are we really going to say that because they did that, or they were waving their hands because of lights being a trigger, that it was okay for an officer to shoot them? Is it okay to really say that when a person is not in their right mind to the point where they can't even remember what they did, if they're given the opportunity to live and come out of it, that we're going to take their mental illness or whatever that last straw was that caused them to break and allow an officer to be judge, jury, and executioner on the spot? I and so many others say no, that is not acceptable, and that we demand more. We demand better. We demand that all Virginians are treated with humanity, despite their mental status, despite their economic status, despite any, intersections. We have to do better because we know better.
This is one of the reasons why the Citizen Review board, the citizen review panel, is so much needed in all of the municipalities in Virginia. We're getting a lot of pushback here in Virginia Beach. I work with a couple of groups rather, the Hampton Roads Black Caucus and a group of the ministers. I can't think of the name of the group right now. And we're meeting with the mayor and some of the other members of city council, and they did not want the direction that's happening. They were resistant. And the reason that we're asking for things like this to happen is because of what you just described. And it kills me because, and I probably shouldn't use the word kill, but once one of our people are killed, the police ask us not to rush for judgment. But you rush for judgment when you kill that person.
And they're trained to.
And they're trained. And then we got people say, well, we just need to give them better training. We have some of the best and highly trained police officers in the world. What will stop this is when they have to pay the same way I pay if I harm another human. When I harm another citizen, I have to pay. They should pay the same way that we pay. No one is above the law. That's what is told to us. No one is above the law, but we place others above the law. This stuff is
Absolutely. Really valid points, and I want to get back to demands because that was something you asked me. But as an educator, we have very high levels of accountability. Okay, as a medic, as a doctor, or as a nurse, there are very high levels of accountability. You accidentally give someone the wrong medicine, okay, your job is on the line. Okay, as a teacher, you fail. Not you fail, but if you do not ensure that your students pass these very biased tests, your job is on the line. Let you raise your voice at a student, and you're under evaluation. And so why is it that we are fighting so hard for the police department to have accountability if what they're doing is not, and there's no wrongdoings? But when we look back to a part of your question about demands, early on in 2018, my family and community members were fighting for the Marcus Alert bill. Back in 2018, it was not until after the unjust murder of George Floyd and the Richmond uprising that fear more so was pricked into our local and state legislators. And they said, wait a minute, we got to do something about this uprising, okay? Now we need the Marcus Alert, okay? We've been calling for it since 2018, if you trace it back. The same thing with the Independent Civilian Review Board. That was one of our demands back in 2018, because we can't trust the police to police themselves. So when you look at even legislation and when you say, okay, why a third party? These are bills that I work very directly with legislators on. I worked with Senator Heshmi on the Independent Civilian Review Board with subpoena power. And I still have the bills. I read line by line and gave her a lot of feedback, which really was not wanted because the cake was already baked before they came to me with all of the bills. Okay. Mm-hmm. But it looked good to say we're working with Princess Blandon, the sister of Marcus David Peters. But the cake was already baked. And I said to Senator Heshmi, why is this bill enabling? It's not mandatory across the state of Virginia, CRBs. It is an enabling bill, which basically says if Hampton Roads, if Newport News Police Department wants to have a CRB, then you can have one. Okay. But it's not mandatory. And it also does not require that the board members are elected community members free of police officers and so on. So again, they gave us crumbs, and a lot of people took those crumbs and they got excited and thought we really had something to celebrate about. But it goes back to knowledge and power. And they did the same thing with the Marcus Alert bill. It sounds good that it's in here, that it's called the Marcus Alert bill, but even that we had to fight for. I remember Charles Cugliato with Legislative Services told me that I could not be, we could not name the bill the Marcus Alert. And I said, well, why not? He said, because we do not name bills after people. I said, oh, well, I played dumb. I said, well, I thought, don't we have the Amber Alert? And he said, oh yeah, but it's policy that we don't name bills. I said, oh, well, I'm a visual learner, which I am. I said, please provide me with that policy. And he said, oh, well, we don't have anything in writing. It's just kind of what we do. So again, we have to start asking questions. We need to be free thinkers and question those that are in positions that are truly supposed to put the needs of the people first. Because what we see again is they're going to take the path of least restriction and they're going resistance, the path of least resistance, and they're going to give us just enough to appease us. Okay, but even though what we really see, what we dissected, is that it's empty.
Have you heard of the Shanti Alert?
Oh, absolutely. And we talked about, I brought up the Ashanti alert and the Amber alert, and Mr. Quigliato got stumped when I said, well, please provide me, this where this is in black and white where it says we cannot. So we actually had to come up with an acronym in order to have it called the marks. I mean, again, these are all of the loops that the Democratic Party, because again, it was Senator Jennifer McCullen and Delegate Jeff Bourne, who reached out to me about the bill. Jennifer McCullen reached out to me after already she had a draft before she even reached out to me. So again, the cake was already baked, but it looked good, it sounded good. And again, we don't need legislators who are going to give us feel goods. We need legislators who are going to give us, that are going to be the voice of the unheard, that are going to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves. I look at Marcus David Peters, and again, that's my brother. I love him dearly. Okay, we can't bring him back. But you know what? We just have Xavier Hill, who was just murdered by a police officer as well. Whether he was speeding or not, what we saw at the beginning of January, okay, is people taking over, okay, domestic terrorists taking over the U.S. Capitol. Okay, and we saw how police officers used every tool in their toolkit. I heard an officer saying to someone, please, this is a sacred area. Please take your feet down. Please don't do this. Okay, so you can have people who are armed that you align with, but you find ways to deal with. But when there are people that you don't align with, the first go-to is to go ahead and take out the problem. And again, I don't know all of the ins and outs of Xavier Hill's situation, but what I do know is Xavier Hill should have been here today and had his day in court. But again, how many of our local or state legislators do you even hear talking about that? So again, you don't hear any of them. If they had it their way, Marcus David Peters' case would have been swept under the rug and silenced back in 2018. We were told when we watched the video, we were kind of threatened and told, come and watch this video or we're going to release it to the public. And after we watched it, I remember, I believe it was Chief Durham or one of them in that administration said, we hope that, this brings you closure. They were hoping that after we watched that video that we took the position that, your brother deserved it, but because we didn't and we fought it tooth and nail up until this day, it a lot has happened. But again, we can't continue to be complacent with things when we see and know that it's wrong. No human deserves to be treated the way that Xavier Hill was treated, period. Nor Marcus David Peters. When we can see again the takeover of the Capitol and how the officers negotiated with them. That we're not saying kill them. We're just saying, as we hear all the time, don't kill us. Show the same restraint for Black people, for marginalized people, for brown people, for LGBTQ people, okay, as you do for people that you align with. So again, we've got a lot of work to do. And, Princess Blandon, as a vessel for the people and the Liberation Party, we're here for it. We demand the full course meal.
Tell us about your inspiration for the Liberation Party itself, because you just experienced the inaction of both Republicans and Democrats together. What makes Liberation Party your vessel?
Absolutely. Well, with the Liberation Party, we are very strong believers that liberation is a human right. It's not a privilege. And when we talk about liberation, it's not just racial justice that we're talking about. It's not just criminal justice. I live outside of Richmond, but I'm very, very involved, and my ears and eyes are to the ground very heavily still with what goes on in Richmond. And when I'm getting calls saying, hey, Princess, we need your assistance, or what is it that we can do? Because we have people who are being put out of temporary shelters, okay, when we're dealing with freezing temperatures. And the city over the summer said that they stumbled on X amount of $1 million. This is inhumane. At what point do we say that housing is a human right? At what point do we say that food sovereignty, is a human right? At what point do we say that, this criminal and justice system is broken on a really, really large scale, even to include our schools in the school to prison pipeline? At what point do we say we know that this is wrong? Now we're going to do better, And so again, we've got a lot of work that needs to be done across the line. In the Liberation Party, we are prioritizing the voices and the needs of the people. We are not ran by big corporate dollars, even my campaign. We appreciate every dollar, that comes in, because we refuse to be the mouthpiece of big corporations. We are going to be courageous. We are going to do what's in the best interest of the people. And we understand that when I become governor, because we claim it, okay, that we will still have to work with the Democratic and the Republican Party, okay? But this is going to have to be a tripartisan show, okay? We're going to all work together, and what we're not going to do is back down on putting the needs of the people over profit in politics, you know? And again, I'm probably jumping questions that y'all may already have ready. We understand, okay, that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Where I came from, my roots are with education. Where I evolved to became into criminal justice and racial justice. And as a governor, I understand that, we have to look at the holistic picture, and we're here for it to ensure that every Virginian is able to live a liberated life, free of worrying about a broken racist system where our Black mothers have to have these conversations with our children about what to do and what not to do, just so that they come home knowing that even when you do right, you probably won't come home anyway, and there's not going to be any accountability. Okay, we need to be able to live free of knowing that we have people who are living in food deserts, and we have people who are living, in areas that the crime rate is high, and we just can't, yell gun control without getting to the why of the situation, why the crime rate is high. And it's not guns in isolation, so I'm a talker, so I'm a slow on down, but we've got a lot of work to do. And we as a Liberation Party, our love and our allegiance and our dedication, it's to the people. The Liberation Party is fully volunteered. Okay, it is fully volunteers. And when I say I work with some of the hardest working people, and I've been a school administrator that has been overstaffed, but when I say that our teams are working around the clock, they're in it because they're fed up, and they know that we deserve better, but they also know that we absolutely can claim better. And that's what the Liberation Party is here to do, is to claim better for all Virginians across the board, across political lines.
Interesting. I love the term liberation. I'm wondering how hard it's going to be to change the route of many of the elders, those who are over 40 in our communities, because they are so highly trained that they're supposed to be either for the Washington football team or for the Dallas Cowboys. They're highly trained that they're either red or blue. And those of us who are melanated think, hey, you can't be red, you got to be blue. Blue no matter what, no matter who. I heard that foolishness going around earlier. How do we? Because I'm an independent, and I started off as a Democrat. I became a Republican for a short period of time, and then I landed where I needed to be as really being an independent. Now I did run, a campaign as a Democrat, but since 1995 I've been a political independent. How do we share this message of liberation when many of us are so heavily tied, particularly those of us who are melanated, the Black community, so-called Black community, we're so tied to the Democratic Party, like it's like Jesus was a Democrat or something like that.
Yeah, I believe that tradition plays a really, really big role in it. A lot of people are just, change is hard, and this is something that their mother was a Democrat, their great grandmother was a Democrat, and I really feel that Black people, we are and have been for far too long, and not just Black people, but Democrats in general, people who have or currently identify as a Democrat. We have been in a relationship, an abusive relationship with the Democratic Party for far too long. Let me say it again. We have been in a very abusive relationship with the Democratic Party for far too long. And even though we see, and beyond seeing, we feel the failures of the Democratic Party, we still say, but maybe if we vote this person in, they're going to change it. And maybe if we vote, their allegiance is to the party. We see that time and time and time again. So I think that a big part of it is to enlighten people as to who we are and what we're about, right? Help people so that they can see. A lot of times when you're able to relate then you're more likely to be open. So to be able to have people just take a second to analyze your life, analyze your current conditions, whether it's your living conditions, whether it's healthcare or the lack thereof, because you have to choose between medication and keeping your lights on, right? If the Democratic Party is for the people, as they say they are, why, are we still dealing with people facing housing insecurities? Why are we still dealing with people who are uninsured? Why are we still dealing with people, with our children, especially in our marginalized and Black communities who are being pushed through the school to prison pipeline? Why are we still dealing with Hampton Roads got a mess on their hand? Okay, just regarding climate change, so what is it that's kind of like Janet Jackson? What have you done for me lately? And we have to get to the point where we see that they can do much more than what they're doing, and it's definitely time for us to claim it. What is the harm in us trying something different? And again, I go back to saying change is not easy, but with the Liberation Party, with our campaign, we're required to obtain a certain amount of signatures, and some people look at that as being a hurdle. I like to take my lemons and make the best lemonade out of it possible, because as we have to obtain X amount of signatures, which 400 in each congressional district, we go ahead and we double it, best practice to 800 in each congressional district. We have to get out there anyway to get the signatures. So why not build relationships and to enlighten people, empower people, and then mobilize them to let them see that there is better. We absolutely can have better. And so we're here for it. I look forward to, traveling around the Commonwealth and building relationships, and as I was out over the summer with Joseph Rogers and Alan Charles Shipman in Richmond, I ran into an older gentleman, Black gentleman, and I'll never forget our conversation. I shared with you earlier. And he said to me, politicians, they come out when they want our vote. They speak a good game, but they don't follow through and they never follow up. And I will never forget that, because it is so true. It is important to me to always, even when I become governor, to keep my eyes and ears and feet to the ground. You have to remember where you came from, because otherwise you lose focus as to why you got in that position in the first place.
Cool. Bro, Con, real quick, I want to get Patrick Ingram's question, which is a little off. It's a little different than the road that we were just driving on. How would you help support communities like Petersburg and hold their municipal leaders accountable? And if you can do that in 30 seconds.
Okay, absolutely. So, I think that a big part of it, accountability is putting the people in the steering wheel, right? So even when we look at, the CRBs, right? The civilian review oversight, we have to start shifting the power from the people in positions to the people who are being affected, by different legislation or the lack thereof. So being able to push the power, shift the power to the people. And when our elected officials underserved, then they got to go. You can't keep underserving the people and keep, your current position. And also, we need to limit the amount of terms, consecutive terms, that our elected officials are allowed to serve in.
I would want to jump in here just a little bit and just mention that I've ran for office 3 times. I got a goose egg going, but I would point out that I've been asked by people as I think about running, what is your winning formula? What is your plan to get so much and so much votes? And you got to realize when they talk about that, they're thinking about votes like it's some sort of assembly line. They think of everything at once. So what is the way to condense everything to generalities to get the most, as opposed to being the things that are the best? I couldn't really put together, hey, this is the surest way to have a good winning argument for the generalities. This is just things I think should be done, and I'm going to run on that. And I got 55,000 votes in the city of Virginia Beach for that. I think you could do something very similar, especially when you get to the point where you need to meet everyone you can to get all these signatures. And all 11 of our congressional districts, I think you said, what is it, 800 per?
Well, 400 minimum, but we're bumping it up to 800.
Bump it up. Each one of those is a conversation. Absolutely. With a person that could, you just need to show them, Seko, for instance, just drank out of his mug. You have a red mug, you have a blue mug. You need to show them there's different color mugs that are doing different things. I'd also point out, just heard today that former President Donald Trump is very big on trying to start the idea of a patriot party. And if he does that, then that's easily 10, 15% of what we now know the Republican Party is just going to latch off and only vote for the Patriot Party. And we would think nationally, okay, Democrats got it in the bag now. But that might lead them to be a little lazy any more than they are already doing. And this is where Democrats could probably break off and start a progressive policy or a liberation party or something like that and seize the moment and spread out the ideas. We need as many ideas as possible.
Absolutely. And again, I think that, I say very frequently that this time is different. People's eyes are open across the board, not just people who have, I was never into politics. I must be very, very honest with you. I'm not a career politician. I'm an impacted Virginian, but a lot of people's eyes are open, from young to old, from educated to non-educated, to politically knowledgeable to not, and I think that, whether it be the Liberation Party or just, we have a large quantity of people, as was stated earlier, that just don't want to vote. They don't want to vote because they don't believe in either of the parties, excuse me. So for us, this is an opportunity to not only reach them, but to be able to reach Republicans as well, to be able to reach people who identify themselves as Democrats and let them know this is a party for all of us. This is we do not have to continue to stay so divided, and that's what we are. This is a party for all Virginians. That is going to ensure that it's liberation across the board for all of us. And so, we definitely see this as an opportunity to claim better for all Virginians across all intersections. And, some people say, well, as a third party, you guys have a lot of odds against you. If there's 1% chance that we can make it, then we're going to run really, really hard with that 1% chance. And I'm a strong believer that the only battle lost is the battle never fought. Okay. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that I didn't try. Our team and our supporters, we would not be able to sleep at night knowing that we didn't try, because then we become complacent with the systems that are in place, and the systems that are in place are broken and they are not equitable for us all.
That's pretty much it right there. Before we go ahead and get closer to wrapping it up, I wanted to see if you wanted to touch on 3 to 4 things that are really reaching out to you, that if you had no party and you were literally running on your name only, what are the things that speak to you that you want to change?
Definitely mental health. Oh man, that as many know, that hit me very hard, to see how you can go from okay to not okay in the blink of an eye, and to see how with the pandemic, the instances of mental health crises are going to continue to increase, and knowing that we do not have a strong plan in place to ensure that individuals experiencing mental health crises receive help, not death, is beyond concerning to me. It's beyond inhumane to me. So definitely our work in strengthening the Marcus Alert Bill, for all Virginians. As an educator, that's my heart. I work with my babies. I call them my babies because I have over 130 babies to include my own. I love them dearly, but it's really, really important that, we look at our education system as a whole, and continue to work towards and making sure that we're able to meet the holistic needs of our students and our educators. We're doing this because this is what we care about. This is what we're passionate about. However, educators are not treated, and we're surely not compensated as professionals, and so that's really important to me, and to make sure that even the infrastructure of our buildings, it's kind of like, when you look good, you carry yourself with your head up high, and you give your best. But when our kids are going to buildings that don't have heat in the wintertime, that are falling apart, it's really, really hard for them to walk with their head up high and feel really good about themselves. So, we have across the board, and even to include ending the school to prison pipeline, education is something that is really near and dear to me. And also, as I'm sure many people know, I'm a science person. So in addition to criminal justice and racial justice, environmental justice is really, really important to me as well. And we have to act on, the lingering threats, of our inaction for so long, not later, but right now.
I would like to think that helps to answer Chiomba's question, because she wanted to ask what sets you apart, and I think that does it right there. That you care that much about those specific issues that many aren't even talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Princess, wow, I love listening to you. Love listening to you. We need to take a quick break and talk about some other people that we truly love as well. So, Conrad, why don't we talk about that vehicle that you love so much?
Just like the hopefully one day many options of a party, you have many options to choose a car. And my option that I chose is down in Chesapeake, 1248 South Military Highway, Southern Volkswagen, part of the Southern Auto Group. Make yourself available to one day, hop on in and speak to Charlie Roy. Get yourself a nice car like I got. I got myself a Jetta from Southern Greenbrier Volkswagen, and enjoy it.
Beautiful. They definitely have some of the best cars you can get in the Hampton Roads area. I want to shout out some other podcasts that I think everyone should be following. The What's Your Revolution podcast with Virginia Beach own Dr. Charles Corprew. You can find that on Apple or wherever you find your podcast. Black Wall Street Today with Blair Durham. It's a great business podcast, particularly those here in the Hampton Roads area. But she does have international and national acts who appear on the podcast, and they give great information on how, if you're a business person, you can improve your business and get the inspiration that you need to continue doing great business. The Get on Code podcast is my podcast. You can find that on Apple and wherever podcasts are found. Hey, we are a series of melanated conversations focused on improving our collective situation. So if that sounds intriguing to you, find the Get On Code podcast. And I want to take this time to highlight Common Sense. That's commonsenseforyou.org. Go to commonsenseforyou.org. They have healthy health and beauty aids. A lot of times, health and beauty aids aren't really healthy for you. So, for instance, toothpaste is great at cleaning your teeth. It's not great for your body. So you might want to look at the herbal tooth powder that you can find by Common Sense for You. So that's commonsenseforyou.org, commonsenseforyou.org. And finally, I'm Seko Varner with Positive Vibes Financial, and I help real estate investors find the funds they need to flip those properties. We can help you obtain 90% of the purchase price, 100% of the rehab costs, and all you have to do is call or email us. We'd love to talk to you, so call, email, text, Positive Vibes Financial. We can help you receive 90% of the acquisition costs, 100% of the rehab costs, so we can make the Commonwealth a more beautiful and beneficial place than we inherited it. Somebody caught that. Somebody caught that. Yes, you can find those podcasts on Android as well. I'm an Android phone user, so salute that. We have some people that are saying, hey, reach out to me, Princess, because they really like what you're doing. And I love Jeff Staples' message. He said, there are 100 types of cereal. There are 100 types of cereal on the shelves on the grocery store. We just need everyone to understand that there are options. There are options. There are political options. I had people telling me, well, if you don't vote, then that's a vote for Trump. And a lot of us believe that. A lot of us truly believe that because we've come to accept some really simple lies. And one of those lies is you don't have options. You have to choose between the lesser of two evils. You don't have to vote for evil. You can vote for liberation now. So let's vote for liberation. Ladies and gentlemen, back to Princess Blandon. Go ahead, Conrad. Take us away.
I definitely want to thank you, Miss Princess, for coming on tonight to the Beach Brothers Show, telling all the viewers in the Hampton Roads area about yourself and how you're running for governor based on your ideas, your experience. And I know it's a long way to November, so we would love to have you back on.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for those who would like to reach out. You can definitely visit us and contact me at www.princessblandon.com. We need all hands on deck, and I am just a vessel for the people. So this campaign, this run is for all Virginians.
Mm-hmm.
This show was brought to you by Positive Vibes Incorporated, our consulting services. We do credit fixes, we do tax resolution, we lend private money, and debt consolidation. So if you need some of these services, we're waiting here for you. Credit fixes, tax resolutions, private money, and debt consolidation. Make sure you call Positive